Hey guys, welcome to 4.2, Solving Systems Using Substitution. We learned one way of solving them last time by graphing. Just a reminder that a system of equations has a solution where the point makes both equations true. Last time we graphed the two lines like this, one line, the other line, and this point where they crossed in the middle was our answer. But you don't always have a graph with you, and they're not always lines that fit on the graph nicely. And some of us found out that it's actually kind of hard to do graphing because if you don't line up the equations or the lines just right, then you're not going to find the correct point. So we need another method as well. And these are going to be where we're actually solving them like equations. Okay? But there is one slight difference, and that is that these equations have two variables, x and y. We can't solve for both at the same time, so we need to find a way to temporarily get rid of one of the variables, because you can't solve an equation with two. There are two ways we're going to talk about doing this: substitution, which is today and tomorrow's lessons, and elimination, which is Thursday and Friday's lessons. Each day will start off with something easier, so like today's lesson will be a little bit easier, tomorrow's will go a little bit more in depth, and then we'll talk about elimination. For today, substitution, or to substitute, means to replace an object with another of equal value. So you can't just willy-nilly replace it with whatever you want. You need to make sure that they have an equal value. Here's an example. If x equals 2, since x is 2, we can take that 2 and replace it or substitute it in for x right here. And it ends up looking like this. Notice how the x goes away and the 2 goes in its place in parentheses. Think about a substitute teacher in school. When a substitute teacher comes in, the teacher leaves. They're not both there at the same time. So when you replace or substitute a variable, it goes away, and whatever you're replacing it with, in this case 2, stays. Now let's look at another example that's more like what you're going to end up doing today. If y equals x minus 3, so this time it's not just a number, it's got a variable in it too. You were going to replace y with x minus 3. So we're going to take this whole thing, the x and the minus 3, and plug them in for y right here. And that looks like this. Notice how both times I used parentheses. The x and the equals 5 are still there, just like they were over here. All we're changing is that this y is getting replaced with this in parentheses. Okay? And how this helps us is now, this equation right here, if I put those x's together, x plus x is 2x. That's just combining like terms. And then you have the minus 3 afterwards equals 5. You guys know how to solve the equation 2x minus 3 equals 5. What we can't do is solve an equation that looks like this one did in the beginning, because there is no way for us to solve x plus y equals 5. That's why we needed this one to substitute, so that now we only have x's left, and it's really not that hard of an equation to solve. One thing that I want you to look out for is you always substitute the variable that's all by itself. So if we look back, this x was all by itself, and this y was all by itself. That's how you know which one to plug in. Let's take a look at some examples. Okay, so this first one up here has 4x plus 2y equals negative 10, and y equals 2x plus 3. That's the one that has y all by itself. That's what you're looking for each time. So that now we know what y equals, we know what its value is, so we can take its value, 2x minus 3, and plug it in to the other equation for y. Not here, because it's what y equals. Not what x equals, what y equals. So that's why I'm plugging it in here. This is what that's going to look like. So you're going to substitute it in. You have your 4x plus 2. That stays the same. And then instead of y, you're putting 2x plus 3 in parentheses. Only the y is getting replaced by the 2x plus 3. Every other piece of this problem stays. That's substitution. Then what we need to do is take this number in front of the parentheses, and we need to multiply it through. So 2 times 2x and 2 times 3, which is going to be 4x plus 6. The 4x out front and the negative 10 at the end are staying the same. They're not changing. Then we're just going to solve from here. Okay, solve it like a normal equation. I'm going to add together these two x's. 4x plus 4x is 8x, plus 6 equals negative 10. So I'm not changing these two. Then, hopefully you remember this from back in September. We're going to subtract this 6 to the other side. And negative 10 minus 6 is negative 16. Then we need to divide by this 8. Negative 16 divided by 8 is negative 2. So I have my first answer, x equals negative 2. But you're not quite done yet because every answer needs an x and a y. So our very last step is going to be to substitute this answer back in. And we're going to plug it back into the one that's easiest because we already know that y is by itself in this one. So we're going to take this negative 2 and plug it in for x right here, which means that y equals 2 times negative 2 plus 3. So this x is just becoming negative 2 in parentheses like this, which is just negative 4 plus 3, or negative 1. So now we know that x equals negative 2 and y equals negative 1, which means our answer is the point negative 2, negative 1. Make sure you put your x value first, then your y value. And on your assignment, I'm going to leave you boxes just like mine are set up right here. Okay? Let's look at another example. Sometimes it takes 2 for everything to click, and that's okay. Over here, my bottom equation has x equals. So that's the one I want to use to substitute for x. So I'm going to take this and plug it in for x right here. Not for y, because it's not y equals this time, it's x equals. And here's what that's going to look like. I'm going to substitute it in, which means that this x gets replaced with this in parentheses. You'll notice there was no number out front of the x, so there's no number in front of the parentheses this time. And then I finish it off with a plus 5y equals 18. Then we need to distribute. There is a 1 in front if you need to put it there, right here, so you can multiply everything by 1 if you want to. It's okay if you don't actually have something to distribute. Then I need to add together my x's. I have negative 3y and 5y, which equals 2y. Plus the 8 right here equals the 18. So really all I did was I took these two and made them into one thing instead of two, which makes the problem a little bit easier. Then I'm going to solve this by subtracting 8 to the other side. That's 10. 18 minus 8 is 10. Divide by 2 on both sides. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there's the first half of your answer. Now we're going to take that and substitute it back in. Okay, so I want to plug in 5 for y in this part up here that I had circled up above. So x is going to be negative 3 times 5 plus 8, because y should be 5, like this. So that y is just getting replaced in parentheses with 5. And then negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. And negative 15 plus 8, use a calculator if you need to, is negative 7. And I'm going to put my point with the x, or the negative 7, going first. And that's substitution. I'm going to do 2 more examples because there are some special cases with this. And while they're weird, a lot of people actually like them better because they end up looking easier. So here's my first example. I'm going to substitute first. And I'm going to look through my problem, which variable is by itself? X. So I'm going to take this and plug it in for x right here. So instead of 2x, it's going to be 2 times 3y plus 2. So we're replacing this in parentheses where the x was. And then I'm going to distribute. I'm going to multiply this 2 times 3 and 2 times 2, which makes 6y plus 4. And then we're finishing it off with this part that was already there. Now, I need to add together my y's. But the thing that's kind of weird that happens this time is I have 6y plus negative 6y. That's 0, guys, so we don't even need to write it because it just goes away. And all I have left is the 4 and then 8. 4 does not equal 8. So that is not true, which means we have no solution. If your variables go away, ask yourself, are these two numbers equal? If not, it's no solution. Okay, coming over here to the next one. Y is all by itself, and it equals 2x plus 8. So I'm going to plug in 2x plus 8 right here. And this one's a little tricky because when I substitute it in, I'll have my 2x minus, instead of y, I'm putting 2x plus 8 in parentheses. But what a lot of people do on this problem is they'll put a little 1, because what I need to do is multiply negative 1 times 2x and negative 1 times 8, which makes negative 2x and negative 8. This part and this part didn't change. Only this part did. Now I'm going to add together my x's. 2x minus 2x is 0. So I'm left with negative 8 equals negative 8, which is true. Negative 8 and negative 8 are the same number. So if your variables go away and you have the same number left on both sides, that's true, which means infinite solutions. We've seen no solution and infinite solution several times this year now, so it should be pretty familiar. Just realize it's okay if your variables go away. It actually makes a lot less work for you because you kind of get to skip the last 2 steps and just write no solution or infinite solutions. Okay, now what you're going to do is go try the 6 problems I've assigned you by following the same steps. I'm going to start off number 1 with you. So we have y equals x plus 8. So we're going to take the x plus 8 and we're going to replace it for the y right here. So the 3x stays the same, the plus 3 stays the same. But instead of typing y, I'm going to put parentheses x plus 8 equals 6. Then I need to take this number 3 and multiply it through. That's going to be 3x plus 3 times 8 is 24 equals 6. And then I'm going to add together my two x's right here. That makes 6x plus 24 equals 6. And then I'm going to subtract my 24 from both sides. 6 minus 24 is negative 18. And then divide by 6 on both sides. Negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3. That's my first answer. Then I'm going to plug this negative 3 in for x right here where I have it circled. So it's going to be y equals negative 3 plus 8. I'm plugging negative 3 in for x in parentheses because I always use parentheses. And you should too because it helps you make sure you get the right answer. Now, negative 3 plus 8 is 5. So x equals negative 3, y equals 5. Down here at the very end, you write your answer, x first, then y. Make a point using parentheses. Okay? Your job is to do the next 5 and ask me questions if you have them.